This is the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network.
Good morning again, people. This is Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show, a special guest host here on the Empowerment Radio Network. We have an exciting show coming ahead. We will be talking to Dr. Umar Johnson in just a moment. But again, I want to make sure that we're clear on who we're introducing. So I'm going to introduce him one more time to make sure that we have good rhythm here as we start. As I mentioned before, Dr. Johnson is a clinical psychologist, a certified school psychologist, and considered an expert in this country on mental health of African and African-American children. He's a diagnostician who does a lot of specialty work on special education with focus on ADHD. I get the A and H mixed up sometimes. He also has a new book out that I'm sure he's excited about and will talk to us about called Psychoacademic Holocaust, a Special Education, ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. And of great focus, hopefully during our show, will be the school that he's building. It's called the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG International Leadership Academy for Boys. We'd like to welcome Dr. Umar Johnson. You there?
Yes, this is Dr. Umar Johnson.
Greetings, Dr. Johnson. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm fine.
Oh, great. I'm glad you're finally with us. It was a slight delay, but I'm glad you're here. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for responding in the affirmative to the invitation. I had no idea when I announced that you would be coming on and that we would be talking, there would be such a great response, but there has been. There's a lot of people looking forward to this interaction. So let's get with it. And we can also talk about anything that you want to talk about or any concerns you have. Even though I'm the interviewer, I would like this to be as much of a dialogue as possible in terms of us both sharing whatever concerns us or what we think is important to be addressed. So let's start off with what has inspired the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey International Leadership Academy for Boys.
The Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy was inspired by my direct experience in America's public, private, parochial, and charter schools, where I saw on a daily basis that black boys were being intentionally miseducated, intentionally special educated, intentionally psychiatrically medicated, and intentionally expelled from school and adjudicated within the juvenile courts and programs. And I saw firsthand that many of the problems that are blamed on black boys are not the faults of black boys, but are rather due to the deficiencies in the school systems themselves. American public schools were never designed to teach black children. They never were. In fact, they were not even designed to teach white children. Public education was birthed by a need of corporate America to have wage earners, low-wage earners, who had minimum writing and math skill. And so big business put pressure on the government to bring forth a public school system to ensure that their wage-earning slaves would be able to do the job that was expected of them. So school was never about preparing anyone for college. School was never about owning your own business. School was simply about getting a minimum basic skills education so you could go and slave for the corporations. And when we look at black children in particular, we see that there are no jobs in America for black children or black people for that matter. So the purpose of public education has evolved in the past 40 years for black children and has went from preparing them to slave in the factory to preparing them for a life of incarceration as it relates to black boys and for a life of poverty as it relates to black girls.
So let me ask you a question. Interesting analysis, and I relate to it because I was one of those kids that was misunderstood and who was called a behavior problem, etc. And no one ever asked me what was going on. It was just a diagnosis that came into being. But what I'd like to find out from you regarding your project, what's going to be, in terms of formula or strategy, separating you from the norm that you just described?
Certainly. Well, first of all, the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy will be unlike any school that exists on this planet. Number one, the focus of the school will be independent entrepreneurship and political empowerment. So the students will be taught in the science of how to build wealth for themselves. Although we will prepare children for college because we do need an educated class of African people who can provide services in the community, lawyers, doctors, pharmacists, educators, psychologists. You cannot partake in those careers unless you receive certain credentials that can only come by upper education. So we will have college prep. But unlike most schools in America, college prep will not be the be-all and end-all for our academy, because we have over 2 million African Americans with master's and doctorate degrees who cannot find work in this country. We have PhD level black folk who are in homeless shelters and eating out of soup kitchens because these college degrees that we teach our children to worship are not necessarily leading to livable wage jobs. So at FDMG, we're going to prepare our young people on how to create their own entrepreneurial activities. Our curriculum will be founded upon 6 core sciences: agricultural and agronomical science, financial and economic science, dietary and nutritional science, political and military science, the science of the black family and black community, as well as African cosmological science. That will be the foundation. But atop that foundation will be several pillars of instruction and curriculum. For example, we're going to have a seashell industry curriculum where we teach our young people how to crab, and how to crab in the seafood industry in particular, the oysters, the clam, the lobster. Black people invented the seafood industry, but yet we are almost none of those who are actually raking in the millions and billions of dollars of profit that is available in the seafood industry. We will have a clothing design manufacturing program where our children will be taught how to make their own clothing so we can revolutionize what black people can consider to be attractive when it comes to wear. We're going to have a hotel, tourism, and restaurant management program where we teach our young people how to invest and how to earn wealth through the tourism and restaurant and hotel management industry, because black people spend a disproportionate amount of money in that area. And again, we own almost none of the commercial ships that people like to go on these tours for. So there's a lot of economic opportunity and there's a lot of room for trailblazing, and we want to make sure our children are prepared to compete successfully for the piece of the global economic pie.
Okay, well, I hear very clearly about the jobs and the education regarding black possibility and history of development and building businesses and things that were founded by black people. What I'm also interested in, though, is what are you going to do? Well, first of all, I'm interested in 2 things. One is, what does political education entail when you say that? And what are you going to do to deal with the problem of so-called ADHD in particular among black boys?
Okay, I'll answer the second question first. In my school, there will be no ADHD. There will be no need for it because we don't need excuses for why black children cannot learn. ADHD definition, it's not a scientific diagnosis. ADHD was invented by the Wall Street drug companies and passed to the American Psychiatric Association in 1990, the exact same decade that the mass incarceration war against black men began to take place. They started taking fathers out of the black household, leaving mothers alone to raise these boys on their own. And naturally, the woman's job is not to provide the structure for a boy. That normally is left to the father. But when the father is not there, the mother can sometimes struggle in that area because it takes a man to make a man. And so what they did was they created a whole set of diagnoses that would be used against black boys to justify drugging them up. And so with this ADHD, which is nothing more than ain't no daddy at home disorder, that's all it is. ADHD, ain't no daddy at home disorder. 85% of black boys on stimulant ADHD, as well as conduct disorder, as well as oppositional defiant disorder, as well as disruptive behavior disorder, not otherwise specified, do not have father figures or role models in their life. So this is not about psychiatry. It is not about medicine. It is a war against the black family and a war against the black man. So getting back to the question, I don't have a need for ADHD in my school because, first of all, ADHD doesn't exist. It's a
Dr. Johnson, just a moment. We're getting ready to go to break. I want the audience to hear all of your thoughts. So we're going on a break in a moment here. You're listening to The Roland Martin Show, featuring Cleo Monago as a special guest today here on the Empowerment Radio Network. And don't forget to call in when you're prepared to do that at 888-669-2281.
After these important messages on the Empowerment Radio Network.
Good morning, everybody. This is Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show, here on the Empowerment Radio Network, and we're interviewing Dr. Umar Johnson, who's discussing with us this issue called ADHD, and you just heard him mention that there's no such thing as ADHD. He talked about it was no father at home or something along those lines. And I want to mention that in instances that I know of, particularly my nephew who has been diagnosed with ADHD, his father isn't home. So diagnosed with ADHD, whose father is indeed at home. But I agree that a lot of black boys, having been one myself, are misdiagnosed, misunderstood, pathologized, instead of having settings and strategies created to make things better for them so they can operate better in school systems. So that's a definite issue. But one thing I want you to talk about, and I think you were getting to that before the break, is what political empowerment entail. What do you mean by that?
Okay, well, first I want to finish my first answer because I didn't. Okay. And that is to say that I will have no need at my school for ADHD, nor will I have a need for the learning disability, nor will I have a need for any IEP or any special education programming at all, because my school will not be based upon making excuses for why children don't learn. So when parents bring their children to my school, they can keep those IEPs, they can keep all the made-up disorders along with them. It's important that when we conduct evaluations as psychologists, and my expertise is in school psychology, the diagnoses that we give out are not scientific facts. They are professional opinions based upon the information and the test data that we derive by virtue of the assessments that we offer. They are not facts. When someone says that a child has ADHD, that is the opinion of the evaluating psychologist. It can be and oftentimes is wrong.
I hear you. They are often wrong when it comes to diagnosing black people. Okay, well, you're definitely clear regarding the ADHD issue and its mythology and why you think that's definitely not going to be part of what you do in your work in terms of diagnosing black children with that diagnoses. So now you can tell us a little bit more about what you mean by political empowerment and bringing that notion to these young children.
Okay. The word wasn't political empowerment. It was political science. And by political teaching our children to bridge the gap between the past and the present, making sure they have a very thorough education and understanding as to how the world in which they live works. So
are you talking about historical? Are you talking? I want to make sure that we're all clear because we all talk in different ways. So you're talking about making sure that your students understand historical context, cause and effect, as opposed to just living a life historically.
I'm about to tell you. You cut me off. I'm about to tell you. Political science curriculum is going to make sure they understand such things as why is President Obama the president? Why is mass incarceration such a big issue with black males? Why is Africa the most minerally rich continent on the face of the earth, but at the same time, financially, the people are in a state of disaster? Why do we have black conflicts, and how does this relate to the political economy in which black people find themselves in? Understanding everyday major issues is going to be the foundation of the political science curriculum. Why is AIDS the number one killer of heterosexual black women on the face of the earth, no matter where they live? Who invented AIDS? Why was AIDS invented? Who invented the Planned Parenthood movement, and why was it invented? Making sure they understand everything that is around them so they are not the slaves of the corporate-owned media. Most people in America are taught by what the media tells them. CNBC and C-SPAN dictates the truth. And because they serve an agenda, a corporate agenda.
Hello? Dr. Johnson? Suddenly the doctor has disappeared. I guess something occurred with his phone. Our staff is checking to see what happened with him, but apparently something happened with his communication device because he was on a roll there, and then he is gone. Hopefully he'll come back. But I think in terms of context, we were saying some similar things regarding what his intentions were. I was saying before he corrected me with his perspective of what he's doing is that I think he's trying to make sure that our children aren't so ahistorical, that they understand the world they live in, and that they understand cause and effect. This is occurring because of this. So I guess the doctor's back. Is he back? Well, he's not back yet.
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, great, he is
back. I noticed
back.
when you make your comments to the audience, I'm not able to hear you. I don't know if
Oh, you can't hear
why
me?
that is, but I would also like. Nah, when you talk to the audience, for some reason, my phone seems to go blank. And I
Oh, well,
would
that's
like to
strange.
hear what you are saying.
That's never happened before. But just now, so I can make sure we
Okay.
understand. Did your phone? What happened when you just were gone all of a sudden? Did
No,
your
my phone was fine.
Hmm.
My phone was fine. My phone never went out. It went out.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought it went on your end, so I guess we'll figure this out. Hello again, family. This is Cleo Monago, guest hosting on the Roland Martin Show here on the Empowerment Radio Network. And we're in dialogue with Dr. Umar Johnson. He's a clinical psychologist, a certified school psychologist, considered an important expert on the education and mental health of African and African-American children. And I was just alerting him before he went on the break of why I wanted him on his show. And briefly, I wanted more people to know about what's considered or what work, because a lot of what we do is not known, and there's an assault on black awareness in this country, particularly things that are of great importance to us or that would help us as a people. People make sure that people don't hear about it, but I'm going to do what I can to make sure people do hear about it. And I'm here to learn more about the school that our brother is bringing into being and who he is, particularly because, as I mentioned to him before the break, man, I got all kinds of responses and perspectives of Dr. Umar and concerns as well. And we're going to talk about some of that, but I want to make sure before we get to any of that, that we're clear as a bell regarding the doctor's intent, his work, what he's doing. I don't know if any of you guys ever seen this video. I really can't tell you where I saw it because it was random. I was at a hotel someplace preparing for some kind of event, and there it was. Every time I see somebody black on TV, I just pay attention. And I saw this brother talking about this beautiful land full of acreage, these buildings. And Dr. Umar, who was featured in this particular video, was all fired up, talking about what he was going to do, and I was moved by it, and wanted to know more, and wanted to hear from the man himself. So the man himself is here. He's talked to us about political empowerment. He's talked to us about what the curriculum might entail regarding his school. He talked about the importance of education. He's talked about the importance of black children knowing why things are as they are, why there's challenges, why there's incarceration issues, why there's misdiagnosis, why there's racism, why black people are on the target board for somebody who has another agenda that's not helpful to us. So he wants to make sure that our children have awareness from a young age so they can be real clear as they become adults, which I think is great. But he was talking about political science, and I asked him, or I told him about why I had him on the show. So I've done that. Any comments about that? And we also, Dr. Johnson, before you talk, we have some phone calls, and I'm going to be getting to those soon so people can join the conversation.
Okay, sure. So a couple quick things for the benefit of your listeners who may not know who I am. Number one, if they want to get more information about the fundraiser itself, we're trying to raise $2 million to acquire possibly the St. Paul's College, a historically black college that closed in 2013, located in Lawrenceville, Virginia. That's still a very viable option. I was on the phone last night speaking with a past president of St. Paul's College and another brother who's a black professional down in the Lawrenceville, Virginia area who are trying to help me acquire that school. And there's some good information that's coming out that I can't speak of at present about us potentially getting St. Paul's a whole lot quicker than I thought. That's number one. We're also looking at the Chamberlain Hunt Academy, which is located in Port Gibson, Mississippi, a white military school that is up for sale. And I've just learned about another school that will be coming up for sale. I'm not going to say where it is because it's just best not to at this point, that I'm going to be visiting. But in all these schools, the asking price tends to basically be the same thing, which is the $2 million. So if anyone out there wants to help raise the funds so we can give our boys an education that they desire, where they don't have, that they need, where they don't have to worry about being labeled, put on drugs, kicked out of school. Their parents don't have to worry about constantly running up to the school because of petty complaints coming from the classroom teacher. Please go to GoFundMe.com/Dr. Umar. That's GoFundMe.com/DrUMAR. You can make a donation. I also want your parents listening to know that every Tuesday morning I host a free Black Parent Teleconference, 6 a.m. until 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Any black parent in the world can call in and ask me any question about education as well as mental health. I'm a school psychologist. I'm a doctor of clinical psychology. I'm also a certified school principal. And so any question about education and mental health, parents can get free expert advice from a practitioner in both fields every Tuesday. If they need that information, they can contact me through one of my websites, drumarjohnson.com, which is DRUMAR Johnson.com. There's also drumarjohnsonschool.com. There's also drumarhbcutours.com. I'm going to be hosting a Black college tour and Pan-African boot camp for Black boys ages 11 to 17. It'll be happening this June and this July. If any parent is interested in sending their son with me for those 7 to 10 days at drumarhbcutours.com. We're still finalizing the package, but the information should be up within the next 7 days. And, of course, I'll be taking another group trip to Africa this year. We'll be going to Kenya and Eritrea in East Africa, and that information should also be up soon.
Thank you, Doc.
Number, if anyone needs to send me a text message, let me just give the number
Sure.
and I'll be done.
Sure.
215-989-9858. Again, 215-989-9858. Personal cell number if you need to send me a text message. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. That was a pretty expansive description of what you're doing and great ways of finding out more. And I'm sure we'll be discussing more before the show's over. Well, we have someone named Farron on the line. Are they still there?
Yes,
Farron?
I'm here. I'm going to turn it.
Hello, Farron.
I'll turn that on. Yes.
Okay, a comment. Farron?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine, but you're kind of loud, but that's probably on our end, but I hear you.
Okay.
Please talk.
I can turn the mic down a little bit. Okay, am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
Oh, great. I'm sorry about that. All right, great. Yeah, I think that Dr. Umar Johnson is a very powerful speaker, but we have to do something about this myth that white people are superior. It's killing us. If you create a school where you teach black people that white people are superior to them when they're the dumbest people on the planet, you are going to be doing a lot more harm.
Wait a minute. Farron, hold on. I mean, I hate to interrupt folks, but I have to sometimes interrupt when we go forward and building up a premise that's not the truth. Dr. Omar never said once or even implied that white people were superior.
Yes, he did. I'm sorry.
Okay.
He asked, why was Obama president? He asked, why was Obama president? With the people made him president because white people are superior.
Okay. I'll let the doctor, before you go, I want to hear your other thoughts, but I want Dr. Omar to respond to that. That hit the implication that you're saying that white people are superior because you brought up Obama.
Yes, and I appreciate you for interjecting because his premise is totally incorrect. Anyone who knows my work knows that I do not believe in the supremacy of one race over any other race. Now, as it relates to Barack Obama being president, anyone who has ever read the United States Constitution, and I have a degree in political science, knows that the president of the United States, the Electoral College, they're not chosen by the people. The predominant members of the Electoral College are members of the white race. So when we asked who put Obama in office, it was white people, members of the Electoral College. I don't dispute it with anyone who knows the United States Constitution and the process by which the president becomes.
They always do that, brother.
They always do what?
Do that. They always say, oh, no, I'm not saying whites are superior, but it's undisputed. Whites are superior. They put them in the Electoral College. That's nonsense. White people are dumb. White people didn't win the debate. Obama won the debate, and therefore Obama won by 10 million votes. What Obama did was Obama made a better argument. Obama didn't argue that the corporate industrial conflict, whatever the nonsense, but he made a better argument than that these idiots that are blowing up marathons are somehow superior to us and that we can't win the debate and thus win the election and thus win civil rights. So this is what I mean by this nonsense that white people we can't do anything, so we have to go to work for them, or we have to grow our own food, or we have to go back to Africa, or some of such nonsense. What we have to do is we have to thinking that white people are superior to us. We have to stop patronizing them, and we have to stand up to them, and we have to get our own empowerment. We have to make our own way on this planet, and that's by not hating our black racing culture and our shoes and our brands and our shows. So stop hating who we are. Stop worshiping these people. Jesus wasn't white. God wasn't white. This isn't their country. It's our country. We gave civilization to these
Thank you,
monsters.
Mr. Farron. Thank you, brother. You're passionate and you're clear, and I think we got the overall point, and I appreciate your call, man. Thanks. One of the things that we have to do, and hopefully Dr. Johnson and I will do this together on this phone call, or on this radio show, I should say, is listen to each other. And we have a right to be emotional, given what we go through. I mean, Walter Scott just got blown away right in our face this morning on video. Well, we're going to a break. I'll be back to finish that thought and continue. Johnson here on the Empowerment Radio Network, Roland Martin Show, special guest Cleo Monago. Prepare to call us back at 888-669-2281. Hello again, everyone. This is Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network in conversation with Dr. Umar Johnson. We have several people lining up to call. But what I was saying, and this is to the callers and everyone, is that we must listen to each other. Some of us are caught up in emotion. Some of us are dealing with some personal struggles. It can be difficult and challenging premises context and keep us, and it's hard for some of us to stay calm, and particularly when we're confused about cause and effect and some of the things that I think that the doctor intends to resolve with our young people so they can have a context and not be confused, so we can not be what I call tick, tick, boom and impulsive and not listening. We have to listen to each other. And I say that because nothing Dr. Omar said, from my perspective, could have been translated into him saying that white people were superior. That's an interesting deduction given everything that he said. And I had to interrupt the last caller because we can't have a rational conversation if the initial come from is not even based on what has actually been said. But we have a few more callers. I think we have someone from North Carolina on the line and someone from Arkansas. I think Colette. Is Colette there?
I wanted to let you know that there are a lot of people who may tend to attack your ideas. Just continue, press forward. You have a lot of supporters. I would love to interact with you. Thanks for giving us your cell phone number. I'll be texting you my ideas. Just as a parent, I just wanted to let you know that we appreciate you. We appreciate your efforts.
Got that, Doctor?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Colette.
Uh-huh.
Is Daryl still with us? Okay, Daryl, if you're still out there, just call us back. I know that this phone radio thing could be complicated in terms of technology, but we're still here. If you want to call us, give us a call at 888-669-2281. As I mentioned to you before, Dr. Johnson, when I mentioned that you were going to be on the show with me today, there was lots of response. Some of it was controversial, some of it was very interesting, and maybe some of the callers will raise some of those issues. Who knows what's going to occur in terms of who was going to call here and say whatever. But there was some concern about, well, you have a concern apparently about boys, the influences that are out there that can impact their behavior and how they act and how they come to be. There's concerns around the effeminization of boys, and you can give us the context that raises that concern. And there's some concern about your concern, and I can be more clear about what I'm saying after hearing from you, but I got a lot of responses from people who were concerned about your perspective on how boys should be, and some of them had all kinds of things to say about that. Before getting to that, I want them to hear directly from you, though, regarding your concern around the feminization of boys, the emasculation of boys, and give us some more information on the context that you think leads to this problem.
Well, I think what you're referring to is my position on homosexuality. I think that is what you're referring to, so I will go straight to it. I do not support in any way, shape, or form homosexual behavior. But I would also like to clarify that I do not advocate neither hate nor harm to any member of my race. I have love for all African people, no matter what their particular psychological challenge may be. Do not support that behavior. And yes, there has been a deliberate attempt to effeminize the black man in American society since the time we got here. But it has been intensified in the past 40 years as part of a global African population control program. Simply stated, homosexuality from a white supremacist eugenist framework represents a very successful population control technique. And why is that? 2 men cannot make a child. 2 women cannot make a child, which is exactly why the homosexual agenda has been directly targeting African-American children. Many states in America today, California being the first one, and Chicago public schools being one of the latest, have actually introduced some form of homosexual study, if you would, into the social studies curriculum. In California, it's required that children be taught about gay. Whether you're homosexual or heterosexual, I think we could all agree that children in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade should not be receiving education on sex, not that young. However, that's exactly what is being done. In Chicago, their new sex education curriculum, and I'll be speaking in Chicago on the 18th of this month to anyone who's interested, but their new sex ed curriculum includes lessons on how to teach 5th grade children how to use anal condoms. I wouldn't want my 5th grade daughter being taught to use condoms at all, and definitely not anal condoms. We got to realize something. In America, the black man has always been considered the number 1 threat to white supremacy. The masculine, aggressive, unapologetic black man has always been considered the number 1 threat in this society. Whether his name was Malcolm X, whether his name was Dr. King, whether his name was Marcus Garvey or Huey P. Newton. The only black man that he has ever been comfortable with was the effeminate black man, because he poses no direct challenge to the white man's control of the society, which is why we see now in many places in society effeminate black men. And being effeminate is not the same as being gay. I want to make sure we're clear. You can be very effeminate and be heterosexual. You can be very masculine and be homosexual. Effeminization and masculinity only relates to the way that you behave, okay, the way in which you conduct yourself. It doesn't deal specifically with your sexual attraction. Okay, so to be homosexual is not to be effeminate. To be effeminate is not necessarily to be homosexual. So it's fair. So, but the effeminate black male is the only comfortable black male in this society. And that's why we're seeing the ascendance of effeminate black men in higher academia, in politics, in the church. We're seeing more and more effeminate black men for power because the aggressive and the assertive and the unapologetic, the masculine black male is considered something to be feared. And that also plays into this whole ADHD thing. It plays into the whole miseducation thing because schools are run by women. 95% of all teachers in America are white racist female, 95%. So when we talk about the black boy struggling in school, we're talking about a masculine child who's having difficulty himself in a feminine way in order to be successful in school. When you look at ADHD, conduct disorder, emotional disturbance, when you look at our boys that are put on these medications, 9 out of every 10 of them are masculine. They are masculine black boys who are having trouble adjusting to an effeminate setting.
Dr. Johnson, let me respond because you said a whole lot. And Daryl, we know you're back, so hang in there, brother, so we can finally get to you and when we get back to the phones. But I want to have a conversation with the doctor real quick. You said a lot. I first mentioned to you before you went on that discussion there, there was concerns about your perspective of the feminization of black men. And I didn't mention homosexuality at that point. I just talked about the feminization issue. And you mentioned effeminization. You also mentioned that you can be feminine and not necessarily be homosexual as a male. You can be masculine and be homosexual as a male. So you brought in the sexuality piece. I was really talking about so-called gender expression, feminine, masculine, etc. And you talked about the attack on black men and how there's been a 40-year attack on black men. And you also mentioned that 2 men can't produce a child, 2 women can't produce a child. You talked about these books that somebody has where they're teaching children. I hadn't heard that before, about condom use and anal sex and all kinds of things. So what I want to try to do is talk about this issue from a black perspective and just look at the black pieces here that are immediately black, not the white students, the white teachers that you referenced. Those books that you're talking about, I would imagine that's a white source as well in terms of these curriculums, because in the black schools that I know about, like at Compton where I'm from, and in South Central, these books don't exist in the black community context at this point. Now, they might be on their way, but so far, there's no black schools that I know introduce these books. So far, these.
Now, when you say black schools, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about
black schools.
I'm talking about predominantly black community schools. Schools that.
So you're talking about public schools.
I'm talking about public schools primarily, yes. And
Okay,
schools
you're talking about public school, and you're talking about California. It's in the curriculum. So there's no such thing as Compton doesn't have it. It's there. Now, whether the principal or the teachers are emphasizing it or not is one thing, but it's there because.
Okay, that's the point. That's the point. I mean, that's the point. If it's not emphasized yet, it's not there. And believe me, I'm very directly connected to the school system there and what's going on, and whether it's hovering somewhere or not. It's not in these schools, and I doubt if black parents would allow it. But that's fine. We can discuss that. We can disagree, and I'm sure we disagree on a few things. Well, we're getting ready to go into a break. Here we go. Next time I'm gonna do more, and I think I'm gonna get some ideas in here for us to discuss. We're going into a break, folks. So hold on, Dr. Johnson. You're here on the Roland Martin Show, featuring Cleo Monago as special guest host on the Empowerment Radio Network. And we'll be back with you, callers. Where we were before we left was the issue of homosexuality and the emasculation of black men, and an agenda or some people use the word conspiracy against black men and their manhood, etc. And I was talking to the doctor, and I'm requesting, before I get back to it, that he listens to me and that our conversation is between each other and not at each other, because that can occur.
Yeah, you don't have to request brother. I'm going to
okay, well, cool, but I have to make the request anyway, because I just met you and you're new, and I'm finding out more about you as we speak. Now,
okay.
Last night somebody sent me a video featuring you and some sister someplace having a discussion, and she identified as a queer. And you responded to her about the LGBT movement and some other things that you had. And I would imagine that you remember what I'm talking about because it was you in the video. I might reference that, but I did last night. Now, as I continue with my point here, my agenda in even raising this is because of the importance of black people actually unifying and becoming comrades with each other and cooperative with each other and less combative with each other, because that combativeness creates two things. It creates more than two things, but at least two things that comes to mind. When we are abusive to each other, dismissive of each other, hurtful of each other, we create potential Trojan horses for white supremacy in blackface, because black people in this racial society become mad at black people and then go work against black people on behalf of other people. And sometimes that's unconscious because the pain is so bad we have not really analyzed it. We're just acting out and become black white supremacists. And I do what I can in my life to counter that phenomena. The other issue that comes to mind is you are building something to help us, and you have these perspectives that might create division. And you said that you do not, and let me finish because you might be provoked by this. You said you do not support homosexuality. Now, for me, that's a strange passage, because that's like saying to me, well, I don't support people who are left-handed. I don't support them. And it doesn't make sense to me, with a goal of unification and problem solving among black people, to say something that I don't support this. So let me finish. I want to be clear. I'm not asking you to support it.
You can stop.
I'm not asking you for approval. I'm not asking you to accept anything.
Brother, I'm not going to interrupt you.
You just did.
Let me finish, because I haven't tried to interrupt you. So just
okay, let me be me, because when you interrupt me to tell me what to do, then it makes time longer. So if I keep saying that, I'll get beyond that and finish my point.
To let you finish, but just stop.
As I was saying, I'm not requesting, and I'll keep in mind what you just said, brother. I don't want to talk over you and be disrespectful or do something I don't even believe in. I heard what you just said, and I'll keep that in mind. Now that you've alerted me that I don't have to say that, I'll try not to. As you might imagine, being somebody who speaks to people, sometimes you have to do that, don't you? You have to let people know that they need to let you finish. So let me get out of that habit with you, because you're apparently different than the others. And I believe that's very possible. I'm not asking you to support anything. I'm not asking you to accept anything. That's not what's going on here. This is, for me, a logical conversation regarding what we can do, if anything, to be more cooperative and effective and successful at collectively empowering black people and healing black people and making us all better on each other's behalf. But when you say terms like, I do not support homosexuality, believe it or not, you're also saying, I don't support this realm of the black family, who are part of the black community and the black experience and have been. When you talk about two men, without somebody saying that or even implying that, when you say that two men cannot produce children, everybody knows that. So when people say that, I'm like, just like you just got finished saying, why you keep telling me not to interrupt when you're not interrupting? I'm like, why do people keep telling folks who are anti-homosexual, the anti-homosexual keep telling people, well, two men cannot produce children? Well, same-gender loving people produce children all the time, but not with each other, but they do what they need to do to produce children. Heterosexual people produce children all the time. Some of them are not prepared to produce children and help to fill up the foster care system. So this is a very complex issue that in terms of everything that's occurring here. But my concern, again, is that we look at behavior that we do as we claim to be problem solvers that create division. Also, your perspective on the feminization and homosexuality and whether a homosexual is masculine or feminine or all this other kind of stuff, there's a lot there. We need a formula regarding what you really think is going on and what we can do about it. And before you comment, I want to mention something where I do agree with you. I agree, because you have to be blind not to see it, that there's a emasculization campaign against black men. There is a campaign to create chaos among black men and between black men and women and between black people. There's a campaign to what I call psychically castrate and perpetuate a castration of sorts of black men in terms of their psyche and how they think, and we keep doing things that make us unconstructive with each other and keep on doing things that make us more constructive for white people than we are for black people. And it's a definite attack on black manhood and black masculinity. But there's so much more to this than what you say, frankly, and I think that there needs to be some more conversations about same-gender loving people as part of the black experience, instead of apologizing or saying insane stuff that everybody knows, like two men cannot produce children and two women cannot produce children. Everybody knows that, and two men are not trying to produce children. That's understood. But men who want to produce children and women who are same-gender loving in both instances who want to often do that quite successfully. So same-gender loving people are reproducing. So there needs to be a more sound conversation about this, and maybe it'll come out of our dialogue. And I have to say, before I go any further, that this community, the black community, has not only done a lot of things that you want your school to do historically on a consistent basis, we also have been the community that has been the most resistant and so far the most unable to have a non-abusive, focused conversation about this issue in ways that there can be some dialogue. When you talk about it, when I hear other people talk about it, it's always a monologue. Like when you were talking to this sister, you had your audience with you and you were talking to her, but it was not a dialogue about this issue. It was more you presenting and having most of the voice. And we need to have more rational conversations about this too, because there's a lot of misconceptions because there has not been any dialogue about this issue.
May I respond?
Of course.
Okay. First of all, I don't like when you take my comments and restate them and take them out of the context. My purpose for saying two men cannot have a child and two women cannot have a child, which we all do know, but we may not all know that this is part of a population control strategy that goes back to 1974, signed into law by former President Jimmy Carter to reduce the numbers of black people on the face of this earth. That's number one. Number two, the conversation that I had with the queer sister in Kansas, Missouri, you talk about how it was a monologue and not a conversation, which is quite interesting because anyone who saw that piece would see that the sister became belligerent, disrespectful, emotional, did not want me to speak, and anyone who watched how I handled my sister, I did it respectfully and patiently, and we did have a dialogue because after every statement I offered, I allowed her multiple follow-up questions So I thought that was interesting. Number 3.
Well, you know what? Hold on. Hold that thought, Omar.
Let me make my last
Hold that thought, brother.
last point.
I want to correct myself. I want to correct myself real quick, and I want you to finish. But I get to do this on this show. More than what I've typically seen, frankly, you were more conversational with her than I've seen. So I think you're right about that. I think there was. I still think what I'm saying have elements of truth.
I have enough material available on YouTube where you can see me on panels. You can see me in one-to-one interviews. In fact, if on my GoFundMe.com/Dr. Umar page, the interview that's on the fundraising site is an interview by a professor from the University of the District of Columbia who is challenging the premises of my book, Psychoacademic Holocaust. So she was not favorable to Dr. Umar. She was more favorable to the opposite argument. And if you see in that interview, I was very respectful of the Queen Mother. So I don't have a problem allowing alternative opinions to be voiced. My only issue is when people want to skew and twist what I stand for so it feeds their argument. Listen, I do not consider homosexuality a natural part of African life. I do not. And being a therapist for 20 years and being a school psychologist for almost 20 years and studying psychology for 20 years, I know for a fact through my own experience that many of our homosexual black males, and there's exceptions to every rule. Just like at the top of the show, you talked about how you got a nephew who got a father at home who's diagnosed with ADHD. There's exceptions to every rule. But guess what? What I find more often than not, because I work with them, many of our homosexual males were molested as children, as boys. There's homosexual pedophilia, just like there is heterosexual pedophilia, and most of the...
Dr. Umar, hold on a second, brother. Hold on. When we come back, we're going to a break now. Brother, we're going to a break. You can't speak during the break. We're going to a break, my brother. So hold on a second. And when we get back, I will be definitely doing some more talking with audience. This is the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network. You can reach us at 888-669-2281. And callers that are on hold, we hear you. We'll be back, and both will be in dialogue.
Roland Martin Show after these important messages on the Empowerment Radio Network.
Good morning, people. Here we are back at the Roland Martin Show with Cleo Monago as your special guest host. We're talking to Dr. Umar Johnson, who's raised lots of issues and clearly quite passionate. And we definitely want to engage that passion, but we have a lot of callers who have called, who are in wait, and we're going to talk to some of those people and see what they have to say. With this caller, is this Lisa or Daryl? Which one of us get to speak to them? Hi, Daryl. You there? Daryl, can you hear me? I guess Daryl was still on hold. How about Lisa? Is she with us yet? From Detroit. Okay. Yeah, something to wait for a kind of conversation that we were just having. But let's see if anybody's okay. Well, we gotta keep going, and hopefully our callers will get back with us. Just a moment here. Well, you raised a lot of issues, and what I would like us to do, so we can make sure that our callers don't get irritated and want to hang up because we get on their nerves by being hyper and too passionate for people's ears. It's kind of
well, no one's hyper.
Let's stay calm on this.
Passion
on this
is a
issue.
part of what I do.
I know, brother.
Okay.
I know you're passionate. I'm passionate too. I'm passionate too,
I got
brother.
you. Let me make this one request of you. One request of you for the rest of the show.
You can request anything you want.
Hold on. Listen. I believe your listening audience is intelligent enough to interpret what I say for themselves. They don't need you to go behind my statement, narrated in a very piecemeal and sarcastic way that is decontextualized from what I said. So no more of your reinterpretations of my statements. I don't like it because it's disrespectful and it's insulting. When I make a statement, if you want to respond to it, my brother, respond to it. But we don't need you to paraphrase what I just said, because I'm quite sure your listening audience is smart enough.
Oh, let me tell you something, brother. Let me tell you something. Let me be real cool with you. I'm going to do the show the way I do the show. And not everybody speaks the same language. Let me finish. Not everybody speaks the
okay.
language. Not everybody speaks the same language.
But
Not everybody
with how
talks
you
like
do your
you,
show,
brother. And I'm not trying
They don't
to.
have to.
Anytime I say
They don't
something
have
that's
to.
incorrect,
But if
that
you do
that
something I don't like,
anytime
I just have to remove myself from the show.
Omar, anytime I say something that's incorrect, please correct me. I have no interest at all, and no need, and no investment into is to misquote you. It's not an attempt simply to summarize and make sure that a diverse understands all that's being said, because not everybody speaks in DSM-4. You know, people speak in different ways, and I want to make sure that everybody I want to make sure everybody understands what we're saying. So that's really my intention. I'm not trying to piecemeal or do anything that you just implied. Not at all. And if it's coming off that way, I don't intend that to be the case, because that's not what I'm trying to do. And no matter who I'm interviewing, sometimes, and I've heard my audience say they appreciate it, sometimes they don't understand exactly what the person is saying, and they it's helpful when I reiterate it. But I reiterate it publicly so you can correct me in case I get something off. So I'm not trying to just sit here and go on a tangent regarding your perspective.
I can reiterate it myself, though. If it needs to be reiterated, who better than the person who said it to clarify the point? I don't need you to clarify.
Well, what's going to be better probably is me, because we already heard what you said, and I want to make sure everybody understands you. And when I say something, you get to say, Cleo, you didn't get that right, man. That's not what I meant. You get to do that.
Require further elaboration. And I don't have a problem providing.
Well, I don't know what people need elaboration on, but let's stop this. Hey, brother, let's stop this, and I'll do my best to make you comfortable. I'll do my best to make you comfortable, brother.
I don't need you to make me comfortable,
and not do
brother.
things
Just
that
don't
bother
summarize
you.
what I have to say.
Okay. Anyway,
That's
so
all
you
I'm
mentioned in your
asking.
last
Summarize what
comments,
I have to say.
you mentioned what you just said earlier about pedophilia, and you gave all these opinions about homosexuality. And you talked about psychology. Yeah, they're opinions. But let me, hey brother, I'm going to finish. Look, Omar, you gotta have the courage to let somebody else speak. Okay? You might disagree with me when I'm finished, and that's cool. But you gotta have the courage to let somebody else speak, dude. Now you mentioned something about pedophilia and how there's pedophilia going on. And that perspective always confuses me, because pedophilia is wrong. Anybody who has mental health realizes it's wrong. But I remember hearing you mention on this tape that I saw last night about the Roman church and pedophilia in the church and the homosexual pedophilia. And it always confuses me, because pedophilia doesn't have a particular sexuality. And there's all kinds of pedophilia happening in all kinds of churches, including some of our churches. And there's a lot of so-called heterosexual pedophilia that's going on. There's some traditions in parts of the country where an older man takes advantage of a younger girl, and she's expected to just take it. There's rape that's occurring. I've been in conferences with the majority of women in the audience, and they all have experienced some kind of molestation. And if you use the theory that you come up with, which means that's saying that homosexuals have been molested, then everybody that I've run into, to some extent or the other, would be homosexual, and that's not the case. So that argument is weak when you say that everybody's a homosexual because they've been molested. I was not molested. So that's why it's important to have a dialogue with two people on the stage having the same level of conversation. And what I said earlier was that when these conversations occur in the black community context, it's one person on stage giving a monologue, talking about it, and people respond from the audience. It's not a balanced discussion. And you also said, when you interjected, and I agree with you, I think I was overarching when I said that, implied that maybe you always don't let other people speak. No, you did provide some space for the sister to speak in Kansas City. But still, you were the one on the stage. You weren't both on the stage addressing the same issue. So your points and whatever you made was the dominant narrative. And we need to have this discussion in the black community context where people have the courage to have a narrative be shared so people can hear other people's realities and experiences. Because what people are going to come out of that meeting with you thinking is that everybody has been molested, that all homosexuals were molested as children, and getting people to stigmatize homosexuals by saying, well, they don't reproduce children. I'm familiar with what you mentioned, that the agendas to stop the reproduction of black people. But just because white folks or whoever supposedly has and actually do have these agendas against black people does not mean that what occurs among black people naturally does not occur. White people don't control the whole natural world. And my point to you is that same-gender-loving people occurred before white people came into existence with their agendas. So there's more going on here, and I invite you and others who think like you to have some dialogues about this instead of a monologue about this, because it's creating pain, dissension, and it's creating a community that's fragmented that feeds into racism, that feeds into those external agendas that want to make sure the black community is so dysfunctional they can exploit us. So that's a very important part of this discussion that I think that we need to have, and we haven't had it enough. But are you still there? Okay, it appears that if Dr. Johnson can't have a conversation, he can't have the conversation. And that's pretty sad, because what has not occurred here, and I frankly think it's a challenge to being courageous, is an actual conversation between two people on an issue. He wants to tell me how to talk. He wants to tell me what to do and how to run this show, and that ain't going to happen. So despite my brother's apparently good efforts, he's a control freak, and he can't control Cleo Monago. So apparently since he can't do that, he left, and that's cool. But if you want to talk more about these issues and some of the issues that Dr. Johnson raised, you can do so at 888-669-2281. We had several callers on the line who apparently got tired of waiting during Dr. Johnson's and our interaction. But one thing for sure, some issues were raised, and he made his perspective clear. But I'm starting to be concerned about whether I should support anything, somebody who cannot have a conversation. From my perspective, courageous people have dialogues. Control freaks who are insecure have monologues and are afraid of being challenged into being wrong or whatever, so they run away. I would never have ran away from a conversation with anybody. I would have hung in there, particularly if I'm claiming to care about the community and care about, black folks. Why not have the dialogue? Why not disagree and have a functional discussion regarding our diversity and our perspectives? So I was hoping to do that with the doctor, but he apparently, couldn't do that. But he raised some issues that I think that are important to look at. He talked about pedophilia, and a lot of people who are in the so-called Pan-Africanist movement, who are against homosexuality, keep raising the issue of pedophilia. Were molested, and they're acting out the pain and trauma of having been molested themselves. I'm not saying this is true about Dr. Johnson, because I don't know that, but I'm saying that it's inconsistent to talk about pedophilia and only focus on homosexual pedophilia when most pedophilia globally, let alone locally, is heterosexual pedophilia, a grown man taking advantage of a girl. Like I said when he was on the phone, I've been to women's conferences where the speaker said, raise your hand, and I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of women. And I see you, Tiana, you're going to get you in a moment, the caller. But I've been in conferences, women's conferences, where there were hundreds and hundreds of women in the audience, and the speaker asked the audience, how many of you have been molested? And 80% of the room raised their hands. Now, another perspective that these so-called Pan-Africanists have is that, well, we can really go into a break. So, to you, and we're going to be getting back to you as soon as we get in from the break. So please hang in there. Be patient, callers. I know you get tired of waiting, but I want to hear from you, and I want your perspectives on Dr. Umar Johnson and our conversation, things I'm saying, whatever comes to mind. This is the Roland Martin Show, featuring special guest host Cleo Monago on the Empowerment Radio Network. Greetings, community. We're back here on the Roland Martin Show with special guest Cleo Monago. We were in dialogue with Dr. Umar Johnson earlier, and that conversation ended. He wanted to kind of direct how I do the show, and I guess he wasn't glad about me saying that's not going to happen, among other things. But anyway, we have some callers, and we have Steve from Detroit. Are you there, Steve? Oh, Steve's no longer with us. Okay, I guess we're impatient this morning because Tiana was on. She hung up during the break. But Tiana, Steve, call us back. We look forward to hearing from you. And I'd rather hear other people speak than me just speak. But I want to mention that I think it's important that we look at clarity and inconsistency in some of these perspectives on homosexuality in our community. Well, before going back to that, because this conversation with Dr. Umar was not supposed to be simply about homosexuality, I want to talk about the fact that he has a school called the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey International Leadership Academy for Boys. It's a very ambitious project where he believes he's going to be helpful to black boys and help them to have a more productive academic experience and be more clear about the reality they live in so they can be more effective black people in the society. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure we'll hear more from him and more about his school. But now we have Meryl D. from Detroit on the line, and we'd like to hear from Meryl. You there? Hello,
yes,
Meryl.
I'm here.
Hi, Meryl. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. You got a comment?
I do. I was listening to the conversation from start to finish, and unfortunately, I hate to say that I could hear the immediate tension between you guys. For some reason, it just seemed very defensive. Both brothers were very, very defensive. But I do have to agree with Dr. Umar on one thing, as far as dumbing down the audience. You know, he has a lot of followers. As you said, you were very surprised at the people that came out to hear him speak. And we do like to hear him speak. And
no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say that, sister. What I said was I was very surprised to get the response to me on my Facebook page and my digital communications when I let people know that I was going to be in dialogue with him. That's what I said.
Right, but the fact of you were surprised at the people that came out because of this man and the dialogue you were going to have. You were shocked that, wow, people were even interested when it came to him. So I do agree with him about letting him explain what someone might have misunderstood.
I agree with that too. I agree with that too. There was no disagreement there. We speak to all kinds of people. There's all kinds of people that call. People speak in different styles. And as I said to him, that whenever I say, in terms of me bringing the audience back in after a break to talk about a guest, they're still on the line. They can correct me in case I got something wrong, but they can't tell me how to do the show. And they can't tell me what to do and what not to do, because I've been doing this for a while and I know how to facilitate dialogue. I think, frankly, and I don't want to talk about him much longer because he's not here to defend himself, that it was definitely a control issue and defensiveness that was occurring.
Well, and that's why you have the right to have your opinion. But see, the thing is, he wasn't trying to argue opinion. He was just trying to state facts. And it just seemed like people wanted to continue to argue with him on facts.
Well, sister, facts. I know facts when I hear them, and I know what he said that was fact, and what I know which one. I mean, you can't use psychology. You can't use European psychology as your frame of reference, and that's something that you critique and then rely on it when you're trying to critique others. You got to be consistent.
Critique others.
What I mean by that is you cannot talk about the problems that occur in white constructs and what white people produce and how they're not helpful to black people, but then go back to use those same constructs to critique black people that you disagree with.
I guess I don't understand, because there's somebody who listens to him.
You're clearly a fan. You're clearly a fan. Yes, you're clearly a fan, and people are very supportive of people that they support.
Wait. See, this is what I'm not a fan. I'm a listener.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And
you are a listener. You are familiar with him.
And I listen to his speeches, and so I just like to get an understanding. And all I'm saying is I'm not getting the same understanding from what I think that you're getting from what you're hearing. And like you said, many people interpret different, many people speak different, many people listen different. But when it comes to someone speaking, it is kind of impolite to try to translate when they're there. Like, let them translate what they're trying to say. Because it did come off like you were,
Sister, I hear you. Look, you made your point. You're already clear. Your point was that I was doing something to him that you think that you agree with him on, and that you see his perspective, and we disagree, and that's fine.
I'm saying as a host. I'm saying as a host of a show. I think you should have been trying to delegate the conversation between the callers and the and Dr. Umar. If they got out of control, then bring it back in. But it just seemed like y'all were arguing a little bit more than should be. You really want to talk to him?
Whenever you talk about, sister, whenever you talk about this topic in our community, particularly between men, it always goes there. It always does. It always does. Yeah. And like I said earlier in this conversation, well, it doesn't have to. I mean, everything has a beginning and an end, and a peak and valley. And I would imagine that if we continued to have a conversation and we're both interested in that conversation, we would have got somewhere. But and there's people who are listening who are finding some value in it. I mean, I'm getting Facebook and Twitter comments as we speak. So there's different perspectives on the conversation. But I always talk with the audience about the importance of, or my guests, of making sure that multiple people understand what's being said. So sometimes I say what I believe they said, but they're always can correct me if I'm incorrect. I'm never just Bogart and saying this is what's going on. We talk what they have to say, and I interpret, and they correct me if I'm wrong. That's something I've been doing for a long time. It's one thing to correct Dr. Umar and he's not around, and to speak for him and to paraphrase when he's not around. But he's right there to correct me in case I got something wrong. So to me, it's petty to focus on the so-called interpretation issue.
He kind of did, and you took defense. He kind of told you, like, hey, do you mind if you let me speak for me? And, in his way, he felt you were wrong in that way, and you didn't feel corrected. So I see what you're saying, but I don't see.
Well, of course you don't see. I mean, you, like I said before, you didn't like the word fan, and I apologize if that word sounded frivolous, but you are a follower. And you said you've seen him speak many, many times. I haven't. I've only seen.
That was very insulting. That is very.
What was insulting that you said that you?
A follower.
Oh, by follower, I don't want to get caught up on words too much. But what I mean by followers, that you follow him and you listen to him speak. Not that you are religiously following him, but that you listen to what he has to say. You go where he goes and listens to his perspective. That's what I meant by follower, not a derogatory meaning when I said that. So I want to be clear. That was not my intention. I meant when there's somebody who I like speak, I go to where they are. I listen to what they have to say. That doesn't make me some type of imbecile or some kind of passive person out of mind. They're interesting to me, so I go check out what they have to say. So I figured that you go and check out what he has to say.
And that's why I guess I feel very sad that unfortunately we couldn't listen to what he had to say, because, like you said, you invited him on the show. So I just
I don't feel sad. I feel like, I wish that the dialogue could have continued, but I'm not surprised at what's going on. I mean, it's something that constantly occurs when this issue comes up. So I'm not surprised one bit. But I'm glad that I got the opportunity to have the short conversation with Dr. Umar that I did have, and I think that it was very educational in terms of how these conversations always happen or what occurs. Pedophilia always is raised, and it's always raised in a way that, in my opinion, is kind of hypocritical, because either you're against pedophilia or you're not. And what people tend to say is not really against pedophilia. It's a veiled secondary attack on homosexuality, which is what they're really against. Because I'm against pedophilia. Let me finish my point. I'm against pedophilia too, but I don't privilege heterosexual pedophilia over homosexual pedophilia. It's all wrong to me.
I think I'm trying to get understanding. What do you mean by against? Like, what does someone have to do to be homopedophilia?
My point is that people privilege heterosexual pedophilia by not even addressing it, and constantly dwelling on homosexual pedophilia as if it's the predominant issue. And men are raping all kinds of folks, and it's wrong. And people who focus only on homosexual pedophilia as if the predominant way of pedophilia, which is men against females, does not occur, and constantly talking about homosexuality. Their real issue is not pedophilia. Their real issue is homosexuality, and they're using the easily disgustable issue of pedophilia to fuel anti-homosexual sentiments. That's what's going on here.
Oh,
because either you against pedophilia or you're not. You don't have no preference. Okay, this one is a little bit worse than the other. No, pedophilia period is bad.
Right. But I guess I don't.
We're going to a break. Don't leave us if you don't want to. We're going into a break now, and we have more discussion to occur on this issue. And of course, it's a dynamite issue, so there's going to be more reaction, and we'll be back. This is the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network with Cleo Monago as host.
Martin Show after these important messages on the Empowerment Radio Network.
Hello, everyone. This is Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show, back with you in conversation with Dr. Umar Johnson. He may not have hung up. He might have had his mic turned off. As you know, there has been some technical glitches that we've had a few times this morning. So maybe he did not hang up. I hope not, because I think it's important that we talk. But let's see and find out what really occurred. Earlier in the conversation, he talked about not being able to hear me speak to the audience. So I don't know what's going on here. But if he comes back, we're going to talk about the pedophilia, relentless pedophilia contradiction, in my opinion, and the difference between human behavior and conspiracies. Because what keeps occurring is as some of these so-called Pan-Africanists keep talking about controlling every element of people's being. Like, for example, if you do something that they don't like, it's because of white folks. Like, same-gender loving people or homosexual and bisexual people exist because of white people. Well, what's really going on here, which I'm going to talk about more on another show because there's not much time to do it here, is black men are concerned about having been castrated and emasculated historically in this country. And one of the things that a lot of black men who have anxiety around their masculinity get concerned about throughout my life has been the existence of the homosexual male. I don't know if people on this in the audience are old enough to remember when the rumor in the black community in the 60s and 70s was that we didn't even have any homosexuals. There were no black homosexuals. That was a white thing. Just like there are certain types of sex, like oral sex and other kind of sex that you've heard of that used to be said back in the day, but the white people, only they do that. Well, simultaneously to those myths, black people were doing those things. And they were doing those things in all black settings when no white people was even around. But there's a lot to this anti-homosexual perspective, and the pedophilia angle is quite common. But we still have Marole on the line, and I want to see if she has anything else to say. Marole?
Hi.
Hi. I want to say your name correctly. Am I saying it correctly? Marole?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Melody.
Oh, it's Melody. Somebody wrote it. Okay, cool. Melody. Hi, Melody. You were saying?
No, I just wanted to get an understanding, and I understand now what you mean, especially when you use the word conspiracy theories compared to this, that, and the other. So I understand what you're saying about the pedophilia and how basically it could be used as a tool or for things to be happening. So I get that. There's many things in life that could apply to.
Yep.
Something that's a serious problem can be used to elevate another problem or make a problem that's not really a problem. So.
Yep. And it's true that, see, what's interesting about these conversations, which is why I think it's important that we have dialogues and not monologues, is that, as I said when I was talking to the doctor, in my opinion, there are conspiracies, if you will, and attacks on black men. I mean, the brother that in Charleston was murdered on video. And the only reason we know about it because it was on video, but it happens all the time. And there's definitely a major long-term, multi-generational, intra-century attack on the black men. But one of the side effects of that attack has been black men being insecure about their manhood and masculinity. Back in the day when they claimed there were no homosexuals or no black faggots and sissies, that was a mythological way for black men to say, I might be oppressed, but we ain't as freaky and as messed up as the white men. And there's so much that could be said with that. I mean, one of the most destructive people to black men was a white transvestite named J. Edgar Hoover, who wore heels and a dress, and he messed up the lives of Malcolm X, of Medgar Evers, of Martin Luther King, because people do what they do for their people based on loyalty, not their sexuality. And there's all kinds of same-gender loving people historically who have fought real hard on behalf of black people, who are not running around with a T-shirt on saying what their sexuality is, but they're there and they're present. Like the sister said on this video that I saw Omar in the other day in Kansas City, the people that created the Black Lives Matter project were same-gender loving or homosexual black women. So same-gender loving people have been a part of the black experience and black empowerment efforts forever. But because of religion and anxiety around the secret of homosexuality existing among black people, which defies some of these manhood investments that we have not had the conversation. And unfortunately, between Dr. Umar and I, a cliche has occurred, an inability to not be defensive and have the conversation. Because like I said before, even if he did not like me, quote unquote, paraphrasing him, it's one thing to paraphrase somebody and they're not there. Like, it would be unfair for me to try to paraphrase Dr. Umar right now because he's not here to correct me. Now, sometimes when people paraphrase somebody or speak about and try to interpret what they say for an audience after a break, they can get some things wrong, and people can have license to correct. People do it to me all the time, and I have no problem with that. But the control thing, tell me what to do and what not to do, hey, I'm not having it. And to me, the whole control thing is about some of this manhood, identity, anxiety stuff that's going on. But I'm told that the doctor is back online with us, and I want to say, in case he hears me, that I want to still hear from him and still have this conversation, but I do the show the way I do the show, and if I say anything in terms of me saying what I believe he meant, he totally has a right to correct me, and I have no problem with that.
I guess you're basically saying, look, technically, we as men have control problems, but I'm hired to have control, so don't tell me how to do it.
No, that's a little bit more cynical than what I'm saying. What I'm saying, I'm not trying to take control at all. That's not what's going on. What's going on with me is that Dr. Umar is a psychologist. Dr. Umar talks in ways sometimes that a psychologist would talk. Not everybody in our audience understands these concepts. So I and reiterate them in a way that I think more people can understand in his presence. So if I got something wrong, he can correct me. So I'm not trying to, quote unquote, control. I'm trying to make sure that multiple different types of people understand what's occurring. And I've never had no problem with that before until this show.
Right. All right. Well, I look forward to finishing you guys' conversation.
Thank you for calling, Melody. Dr. Umar, are you back?
Yes, sir.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Sure. What I would like us to do going forward, if we can, is again have a dialogue about these issues. And hello, I guess we got to get that.
I'm still on, but yeah, there we go.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you for coming back. I'm glad that you're present with us again, and that we can further this dialogue, and hopefully not necessarily agree, but to understand and to have a functional, constructive interaction regarding issues. And homosexuality, which I think is important to talk about in the black community context because it has not been talked about rationally from my perspective. And when I say rationally, I don't mean agree with it. I mean a rational dialogue. That's a dual discussion as opposed to a monologue. That has not happened enough. But this issue is not about just homosexuality. It's about the state of black boys, the state of our kids, and the different influences that are in the landscape that disrupts their lives and disrupts their development and disrupts their capacity to be strong black people who, from my perspective, will be loyal to black people and not confused about the importance of that as they grow into being adults. And from my perspective of reading about your school, that's your intentionality. But I was concerned also of alienating same-gender loving people who care about black people just as much, and all this pathological description that might create conflicts. But before you respond, if you don't mind, because one of the complaints has been people not being able to get in to this discussion, we're going to see what Sean from New Jersey has to say about this discussion. Sean?
Sure. Yes.
Good morning. Yeah, I hear you just fine.
All right. Dr. Umar, how you doing, boss? Peace and love. I just want to, I just want to ask the host, are you a homosexual?
I'm a same-gender loving man of African descent, yes.
Oh, no wonder this is why. See, this is part of the problem.
Now, Sean, before you go on, seriously, I want to hear you, but before you go on, when you say stuff like this is part of the problem, please prepare to be explicitly clear about the problem of and what makes it a problem, so I could be able to address something that I understand.
Because you deflect, the brother come on and talk about males
specifically heterosexual males, but I'm sure he's not going to turn down effeminate boys if they showed up at his school. He want to help us. We ain't got no help out here. Our black women haters, these crackers haters,
Sean,
the Latinos.
Sean, I'm sorry. No, but you said something. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but you said something earlier about the problem. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe you'll get to that. Go on.
Let me finish.
Sure.
The Hispanics, which I live in New Jersey, you can't get a job unless you speak Spanish or unless you're some foreigner here. Come on, we got deeper problem, and he trying to take one step to solve the problem. And I contribute to the school when it was up on when he had a GoFundMe campaign. So I don't understand, why do you deflect with the talking about the homosexuality when that's a small part of what he's trying to get done? He knows there's nobody else is trying to help, including you homosexuals.
Sean, when you first started talking, you mentioned something about the problem and that being part of the problem, and I wanted to find out from you what you were speaking of, and then you mentioned...
Because you didn't put it up front that you was a homosexual, and that's what you're doing.
Man, I don't put up, because that's for me, Sean, for me, we got to go into a break. Hold that thought, Sean. I want to respond to that, but we got to go to a break. Yeah, we got to pay the bills. So this is Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show, interviewing Dr. Umar Johnson. We have callers coming in, and we got to go to a hard break real quick, and we'll be right back. Good morning, community. We're back here on the Roland Martin Show with special guest Cleo Monago here on the Empowerment Radio Network. And before talking to the brother Sean on the phone, and I want to say this to Sean real quick because he said something about I didn't say I was a homosexual up front. And from my perspective, that whole come from is based on a lot of mythology about many same-gender loving people. I didn't call Dr. Umar to talk about homosexuality. I do not have a homosexuality pushing agenda. Now, I can talk about the issue quite well and clearly, but it's just like when Dr. Umar got on the call, he didn't say, hello, this is Dr. Umar, the resident heterosexual psychologist. He didn't introduce himself as a sexuality. And I don't introduce myself as a sexuality either. I'm not here pushing a sexuality. So I never go nowhere and go, this is Cleo Monago, the homosexual. Can you hear me? Or you don't hear me? Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah.
Did you hear what I just said, or you didn't hear that? No, you said before the break that I didn't say that up front.
From what the brother came on, then it's a problem. That's my point. Stop trying to talk for me, man. I can talk for myself. I'm not one of these gutless Negroes that y'all have on these airs, man, and on these radio stations as hosts and as TV show hosts. I'm not one of them. I can speak for myself.
Brother, I'm not trying to speak from you. I heard exactly what you said, and I repeated what you said. You said that you didn't say you were a homosexual up front. I wrote it down when you said it, so I wouldn't misquote you. So I'm not trying to speak for you. I'm talking about what you said, and I'm letting you know that I don't go around being a so-called homosexual up front.
Once you started the deflection from what he came on, which was to talk about boys, was something you women and you homosexual have a problem with when people want to just sit and talk about heterosexual little boys, making them strive and be better and do better for the community. Y'all always, it's either women or it's always a group to come in and put somebody. I noticed that. Every time somebody want to talk about little boys, raising up little boys to be men, to be strong, to be productive, to just do right by the community, it's always somebody coming, well, what about the girls? Well, what about the homos? What about the Latinos? What about the Asians? What about that?
Sean, brother, that did not occur. Sean, that did not occur. Sorry, brother, but that did not occur on this show. What you're saying just now did not occur on this show. Hello? Is Sean still with us, or is he gone? All right. Well, I want to say this to the audience who just heard Sean's comments. He said something about, and I remember hearing, as a matter of fact, Dr. Umar complaining about this in that Kansas City discussion about people replacing or trying to deflect focus on black folks with other issues. And one thing that came to mind when he said that was, well, there's some same-gender who are black all day long, 24/7, who are always a part of black discussions, who are still part of the discussion. So when I talk about these issues, it's not an issue of bringing something in to replace blackness. It's expanding the lens of what blackness includes. So I want to be real clear about that. But this conversation is not about derailing or deflecting the work that Dr. Umar is doing. As far as I'm concerned, if Dr. Umar is going to have a school for young boys, he's definitely going to have a percentage of those young boys who are going to be likely homosexual, bisexual boys, because that's what happens when you have a collection of all kinds of people. All kinds of people show up called black. So I never really thought about the separation that Sean referenced. But I also want to say that I was not trying to talk to the doctor about just homosexuality. I was talking about boys and men and his perspectives. And unfortunately for some people, homosexuals, particularly men, there's no separation there like people would like to think. You still with us, doctor?
Yes, I do. And I wanted to say that I did agree with my brother Sean's comments. They may not have all been relevant for you, but I do think when we look at the larger context, whenever we talk about a heterosexual black masculine male agenda, it always tends to get curtailed or furloughed into a conversation about some other group. It's almost as if no one is interested in dealing with the plight of the heterosexual masculine black male. As he said, the conversation gets diverted into, well, what about the homosexuals? What about the women? What about Latinos? What about all these other groups? And for me, in my work, I really believe that heterosexual masculine black men, they are the most significantly discriminated against group in this country. It is not homosexual black males. When we look around, I'll look at my doctoral program real quickly. My doctoral program, there was a black male on the faculty, homosexual. He was the only black male on the faculty. I look at other schools I've attended, and when I talk to other brothers and sisters who are in undergrad, graduate school, doctoral programs, we are seeing an ascendancy that is coexisting with the oppression of the heterosexual black masculine male.
Well, doctor, the concept of a heterosexual, can you hear me? You hear me? Okay. The concept of a heterosexual conversation was never introduced in this conversation until a caller brought it up. We didn't call this conversation a heterosexual conversation. You didn't call this conversation a heterosexual conversation. You called it, I called it a conversation about boys and your school. It was not referenced in terms of, it was not, brother, let me finish, and I want to answer, I cannot wait to hear your questions, and I want to answer all of them, and I'm very serious about that. And David from LA, please hang in there, brother. I know you're on the phone waiting to talk to us, but I want to make my point. For me, this was not a heterosexual or homosexual conversation. It was a conversation about black boys. And even you didn't frame it in a sexuality terms until the caller did that. So there was no attempt here to derail anything. Most of the conversation was about your school and boys. Now, when I hear the term boys, I don't make an assumption that they are heterosexual. I don't know what they are, and I don't have any finite assumptions about what they are. I assume they're boys. And I assume I have to break it down that they're going to be all kinds of human beings under the rubric of boys, because I know that occurs. But I was not having no bias about how they should be or what they should be. They were boys that you were taking care of and that you're creating a school on behalf of. It was not a heterosexual conversation for me. And when I brought up the issue of feminine males and you're concerned about that, believe it or not, I wasn't even thinking about homosexuality at that point yet either. You brought up homosexuality because you said, well, let's get to the point. It's about homosexuality. Well, you brought it up, and I'm cool with that. But that's not where I was coming from and where I'm coming from. I'm really concerned about black boys. And as a same-gender-loving man who fits in the category of black males, I'm concerned about black males. And one more thing before you speak. You talked about how this society and the racism in it targets and focuses on the masculine heterosexual black male. Well, I got to tell you, man, and that's a fallacy. Let me finish. As I have got at, reported by the cops, everything that black men go through, I go through, without exception. And when it comes to Cleo Monago in particular, even the so-called white gay community, they do whatever they can to marginalize and destroy my image because I'm black affirming, and they don't play that. One thing you did say, that I heard you say on the Kansas City video was that the LGBT movement is another angle on a white supremacist agenda. And hey, I agree with that and have said that before I ever heard you say that. It's in writing on articles I've written decades ago. So we have no argument there or no disagreement there. But the attack is on black men's, brother. When those white boys, and I forgot the brother's name, who got ran over by a truck, but there were some white boys in the Midwest who decided to go and run over a brother. And before the show is over, after the next break, I'm going to get his name so I can say it on air. But it was a brother who white boys targeted, and they ran over him and killed him. They didn't know that he was care if he was a homosexual. He was a black man. And white supremacy is emasculating black men. That's another thing that's going on that I think is true. But it also is chasing down black men because they're black men, and not pulling them over and saying, "Are you a homosexual?" Because if you're a homosexual, we're not going to mess with you. That's a fallacy. Black men, regardless of their sexuality, particularly if they're so-called masculine, I'm considered so-called masculine. So when I'm walking down the street, people who look at me as the enemy or who want to target me, they do not care what my sexuality is. And there are so-called masculine male homosexual people in this movement who've always been in the movement for black people, Pan-African, etc., but who have not identified because of fear of being attacked and fear of having to deal with rejection and judgment by the community, so they just keep it to themselves. And that's been the case for a long time. So there's a lot of misinformation and ignorance about our diversity. But I'm going to close out by reiterating supremacy, particularly if you're a strong brother. They do not care what your sexuality is.
So, 3 questions for you.
Sure.
3 questions. The first question is
David. I'm sorry, David. I want to hear Dr. Umar. I want to respect the guy on the phone. Dave, please hang in there, man. I want to hear what this brother has to ask me, and we're gonna get to you. So don't try not to go away. I know you're waiting. Go on, Doctor.
Okay. The first question is when say that there is in fact a war against black men in this society, and there is an effeminization campaign against black males in this society that you don't agree with, but at the same time, being
I'm sorry, we're going into a break. Hold that thought because I want to hear that question. Well, we got to take breaks. Sure, it's not personal. Sure. Callers, audio break coming, and we'll be back on the other side of the break. This is the Roland Martin Show with special guest Cleo Monago as host with Dr. Umar Johnson. Greetings, community. We're back here with Dr. Umar Johnson and our call-in audience. What I got to do real quick, Dr. Johnson, is let Dave finally speak. He's been on a break for a long time, but do not forget your 3 questions. Is Dave still there?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm still here.
Hi.
You can let Dave go.
Go on, Dave.
Hey, what's up, brother Dr. Umar and Cleo? I'm very surprised at what I've been hearing. It kind of reminds me of in 1963 when Malcolm X was at Berkeley. If you're going to have a guest on, let's hear from the guest. The host, you have made this whole show about you. And I think that the lion's share of, you asked Dr. Umar to be on your show. So why don't you afford him the courtesy of explaining himself without interruption? And not only that, the passive-aggressive attack that you've had against him and the one sister that called that you can and a follower. You know, those passive-aggressive attacks are not wanted, are looked upon as being cute. You know, it's very disingenuous. So I would just say, why don't you do as most guests should do? As most hosts should do, and allow the guests to speak for themselves. That's all I have to say. I would rather hear Dr. Umar than you, brother.
I have no doubt that that's the case. Thank you, Dave. Thanks for calling. All right, Dr. Umar, you have some questions for me.
Yes, I did. I had 3 for you, but if I could really quick, you would allow me to. I would like to read the DSM position paper, and it's real quick. It'll probably take me a minute.
Man, I'd rather hear your questions. I really want to have a dialogue with you. I'd rather hear your questions than you read anything, because time is limited. We're about to get off the show.
I do believe, Cleo, for the sake of the audience, for their own education on the normalization and acceptance of homosexuality, we need to know why it was taken out of the DSM as a mental illness. Don't we?
Okay, but what about
put it in context?
Okay.
You know what? Let me do this then. Let's do a compromise. Let me just read a couple sentences instead of the.
Let's make it quick though, because I want to hear your questions before we end the show.
I got you. I got you, because I know the time is ticking. I got you. Okay. Now, up until 1974, April of 74, when the 6th edition of the DSM-2 was published, homosexuality was a mental illness. It was known as 302.0, and it was called sexual orientation disturbance / homosexuality. Okay. Now, according to the APA, and I'm reading directly, it said controversy rages as to whether homosexuality should be regarded as a pathological deviation of normal sexual development or of the human potential for sex. Recently, the controversy has focused on the American Psychiatric Association's DSM-2, where homosexuality is listed as an official diagnosis in the section on sexual deviation. It says the proponents of the view that homosexuality is normal argue for the elimination of any reference to homosexuality in the psychiatric disorder manual because they consider it to be incorrect. But then it says those who argue that homosexuality is a pathological disturbance in sexual development assert sexuality out of the DSM would be to give official sanction to this form of deviant sexual development, and it would be a cowardly act of succumbing to the pressure of a small but vocal band of homosexual activists who defensively attempt to prove that they are not sick and would tend to discourage homosexuals from seeking the much-needed treatment. Now, that's just the intro I wanted to, so the audience knows that even amongst psychiatrists, mainstream psychiatrists, black and white, there is considerable disagreement on whether homosexuality should be viewed as an illness or as normal behavior. And that disagreement goes up to this day. And I like putting that out there because a lot of people are under the impression, that psychiatry and psychology has defined fully for everyone that homosexuality is a normal form of behavior, and that is not true. You have just as many psychologists and psychiatrists who believe it is an illness as you have those who believe that it is normal.
Well,
now,
Doctor,
my three questions.
well, wait a minute, brother. See, I got to respond to that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I got to respond to that. First of all, that's the same context. You know, the mental health. The people that determine what mental health and is and is not in this country, historically, have you ever heard of Dr.
Yes.
Tell us what he did.
He used to diagnose black people with a disease called
drapetomania. Exactly.
Running away from slavery was a mental illness.
Yeah, white folks who also created that book and who you're quoting right now also said that to want to be free and not want to be a slave was a mental illness. So there's a whole context here of white people and their subjectivity that needs to be broken down, which you don't have time to do in the next 5 minutes. But see, I don't need to read the DSM-3.
Totally agree with that.
Let me finish. Let me finish, brother.
Go ahead.
You heard of Leakey. Leakey went around with a skeleton of a black man and a white man to prove that the cranial cavity of a black person was smaller than the white man. All of it was mythological, not true. But he looked very legitimate with his thick glasses and his stethoscope as he went around the country and the world proving that we were inferior, also using the mental health, anthropology, all kinds of stuff to make his point, and he was wrong. I don't need proof, and I'm bringing myself, can sound less theoretical and just be real about reality. I don't need to read a DSM-4 or any of those things to know that I exist and know how I came to be. So that's another conversation I would like to have with you when we have more time. But I don't care what those people are saying that you just got finished saying, because Manifest Destiny was considered a legitimate perspective too, which they use as an excuse to murder everybody who are original to this country. So I don't care. I don't care about those contexts. The conversation needs to be more on the road.
I follow you.
But I want to hear your questions. And there's a sister named. There's somebody from Phoenix.
But I want to go back to why I read that. I didn't read that because I believe the DSM to be the be-all and end-all. Anyone who knows my work knows that I intensely disagree with many of the diagnoses in the DSM, most popularly.
But you read it, though. You took up time on the show to read it.
No. But listen, what did I say, though? The reason I read it is I wanted the listening audience to know that there's a psychiatrists and psychologists in this country who believe it to be a mental illness, even though it is now considered normal behavior. That was only because of a popular vote at the APA conference, not because of scientific evidence that proves
right.
people are
But it's because Dr. Umar,
There's no conclusive proof.
it's because of voting that we can vote. It's because of voting that we have the right to now go to the bathroom where we want to. It's because of people voted, despite the white supremacist perspective of things, that we made the things occur. Well, voting is just one thing.
Not science. Voting is based on all.
Drapetomania was based on so-called science. The inferiority of black people was based on so-called science, doctor.
Stay with me. Stay with me.
But we got to get to
science. Can we agree? Can we agree that
better do it quick?
Is not a science. Stay with me. First question for you. Can we agree that voting is not a scientific way of determining whether or not people are brought into this word homosexual? Can we agree on that?
We can agree on that, but we got to talk about why I mentioned voting, though. See, I didn't mention voting because I'm crazy and out the sky blue. I mentioned voting because you talked about based on voting, it was taken out of the DSM-3 as a mental illness. That's why I brought up voting.
Right, but here's my question. Listen, if we wanted to,
we're gonna miss your questions for me, man. If we don't hurry up and get on this, because it's 12:39.
If we want to determine, stay with me, my brother. If we want to determine whether or not a certain illness, okay, is pathological or man-made, any illness, I don't care if we're talking about the flu, I don't care if we're dealing with homosexuality, any condition, do you think that voting is a scientific way?
No. You brought up voting, brother, not me. You brought up voting, not me.
I'm asking you the question, though, my brother.
Answered
because
it.
That's how
and I answered it.
Homosexual. But stay with me. All I'm saying is homosexuality.
Dr. Omar,
regarded as no.
Look, brother. Sorry, you've already done the DSM-3 thing, and I want to hear your questions. And also, we have a caller. We have a caller too.
Let me make this statement.
Okay, but I might have to cut you off now if you don't hurry up.
Let me make the statement, my brother. All I'm saying is that homosexuality became normal in 1974.
I know that.
Based off a vote, not scientific evidence.
I know that.
A vote.
Okay. So to answer your questions, brother, you made that clear.
You know that. Okay, good.
But I knew that.
Now, here's my question. Number one, when did you realize and how did you realize that you were homosexual?
I grew up from a person who was prepubescent, who did not think about sexuality, just like most pubescent, don't think about sexuality or intimacy with somebody else, and to a person who developed and recognized those types of tendencies and interests in myself that were romantic, erotic, etc.
How old were you when you noticed you had homosexual tendencies?
I noticed that I was somebody who had feelings, and that were their so-called homosexual feelings at around 9.
How old?
I just got finished saying. I said 8 or 9.
Okay, so you're telling me at 8 years old, which is an age at which heterosexual or homosexual children do not begin to develop a sexual attraction for anybody. Well,
what I said about me, I can't give you textbook page 6 of what you read. I'm telling you about me. Like I said before, as I was growing prepubescent, let me finish my point, man. You got to let me do it if you're going to ask the question. When I was prepubescent, I didn't have those kind of feelings, and as I grew past pre-romance, etc., I realized where they were directed. But now we have to go to a break. I knew that was going to come up. We have a break we're going to now here on the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network. We'll be back, and we're going to be closing soon. But the doctor and I got a lot to talk about. I don't think I got all of his questions in, but we'll be back. Greetings again, family. This is Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show, special guest, and we're in dialogue with the community. And we got people writing saying they're trying to get in, can't get in. So I don't know what's happening with that, but keep on trying, even though this is our last segment. But we were talking with Dr. Umar. He was asking me some questions, and I was responding to them as I could. But he talked about the DSM-4 and how there's arguments even among white folks about whether homosexuality is a mental illness or not, and all those kind of things. And my perspective is that I don't care what they say. Here we are. But his question was that he was trying to make a point about me and myself and my own development sexually. And I answered the question that, just like any other normal child, once I had no sexual sensations pre-puberty and then fun. And at some point as I grew up, 8, 9, heading into teens, I discovered them and they were as they are.
Mm-hmm. But one other question for you, my brother, then we can hit the phone lines.
It got to be quick, though, because I got to get these people on this phone. It's filled up.
No problem. No problem. Here's the question. Homosexuality. The brother Sean who called in earlier, he did bring the question to you. Why didn't you make it clear that you were a member of the LGBT community?
I'm not a member of the LGBT community, brother. I am not a member of the LGBT community. That's not my come from. That's not my frame of reference. I'm not involved in that.
I got you. I understand that. You do not identify with the LGBT community, but you are a homosexual, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I got you. Now, why is it that so many homosexual males, black men, but speaking for yourself, okay, why is it that on the one hand, y'all want to be accepted and you want your orientation to be normalized within the community, but at the same time, you're not overt about identifying as a homosexual? In other words, it almost seems as a manipulation, if you would, almost as an infiltration and then later exposure. Why can't it be stated out front that this topic that we're discussing, I'm homosexual, and because of that, my views may be influenced by my sexual orientation? It just seems to be a contradiction that on the one hand you want to be accepted, but on the other hand you don't want.
Okay, you made your point. You made your point, brother. First of all, I can speak for myself because that's all I can do this morning is speak for me.
Yes,
I don't ask for acceptance. I don't ask for acceptance and don't request acceptance or any of that. I don't need that. What I do need people to do.
I understand.
Let me finish my point. What I need people to do is have a rational, black, informed, culturally relevant perspective on the issue and to rationally engage me about the issue if they choose. I'm announcing no sexuality and asking nobody for acceptance. Now, I have no problem. As soon as you asked me about it, I answered at the beat of a drum because I don't have no problem saying that I'm a same-gender living person. Not at all. But it's rarely is it relevant because I don't have homosexual eyeballs that look through the world and everything with a homosexual analysis. I'm a black man in a society who's concerned about the treatment of black people and what happened to the brother who got murdered in front of us on the camera. And I'm a protector of black people and black life and defender of black people and black life. And I'm loyal to you. That's why you're on this show. The advancement and protection of the health of black people. That's what I'm about. I don't go around with no homosexual tambourine. So I don't walk into the room. I don't walk into the room and go, here I am, the homosexual representative. No. And I have to reiterate, because of how people think in the society, that I'm not part of no LGBT agenda.
That you did not agree with me or any of the
I do not agree with you at all. You have an outsider. You have an outsider theoretical reactionary perspective. I don't have that same perspective as you. So of course, yes, it is reactionary. But hold on, brother. Is celebrity still with us? Is celebrity still with us? Hold on a second, doctor, because we have a phone caller.
Go ahead.
Celebrity still there?
Yes, this is Celebrity calling from Phoenix. Hi, Umar.
Please, Queen.
I also wanted to say that I'm very disappointed in the way that the interview was going earlier. It seems that when the young man called in and clarified that you were a homosexual, it made it much more clear to me why you were giving all this pushback to Dr. Umar, because now you know that he opposes your lifestyle choice, and it's coming through in all of your conversation with him. You need to find a way to separate the gay you from the journalist you. Because
Thank you, sister.
It's going nowhere. He's not going to change his position on homosexuality. And so in order for the conversation to go more smoothly, you need to just separate that. He's not attacking you personally, but it's coming through very strongly. Umar, keep up the good work. You know I support you and your work, and have a good day.
Thank you, celebrity, and thank you for making it real clear that you're simply biased, and that your perspective is biased. Because I'm not coming from no homosexual pushback. That's just not true. I have conversations all the time that include this issue, but it's relevant to the discussion in terms of some of the concerns that Dr. Johnson has. But oh no, what you're saying, right? What you just got from the Sin Celebrity was simply wrapped up in your bias and your support of Dr. Johnson. It was not based on a factual analysis
Cleo,
of me.
But Cleo, you think you can separate who you are from your opinions? You cannot. There's no way you can be gay and not be an.
Stop calling me gay, man. No, let me tell you what I am. You don't tell me what I am. I don't identify with gay and that whole paradigm.
To separate who you are from what you think. You cannot do that. There's no dividing line between I'm homosexual, but I'm not pro-homosexual. That doesn't even make sense, Cleo.
It doesn't make
How
sense
can
to you.
say
It doesn't make sense to you because you cannot fathom what I'm saying. You're caught up in your perspective. You're caught up in your paradigm, in my opinion. Let me finish, brother. I got to finish my comments first. I'm going to finish my comments, brother. Hold on. Let me finish my comments. You have no choice, dude. I got to finish my comments. You are coming from a place of being reactionary. You have a perspective. The sister has the perspective, and that's what's going on here. Anyway, because of time, I want to hear your final question. Because of time, I want to hear your final question, man.
Me the proof.
I don't do gay, brother. Now, if you want to come back on the show tomorrow, and we can.
You don't do gay? What do you mean you don't do gay?
It's 12:53. Do you have a final question?
Yes, final question. What good is going to come to the black community from the open expression and expansion of homosexuality? What benefit accrues to us by accepting this lifestyle?
Well, I don't know what you mean from a black perspective of an open acceptance and expansion. Let me finish, man. That's why I said don't interrupt me earlier, because I knew I was going to say this to make you interrupt me like you're doing right now. I knew you.
Go ahead.
This expansion stuff that you're talking about, all these other kind of things you're talking about, is based on your concerns. I'm not involved. Let me finish, man. I'm not involved. Let me finish, brother. I'm not involved in the stuff that you're talking about. I'm not involved in an expansion. I'm just here existing and doing what I do. I'm not involved in this expansion agenda that you're talking about.
From the gay movement. You cannot.
I am very separate from the gay movement.
Gay is therefore a part of
let me ask you a question, Omar. Omar, do you want to have a real conversation on this issue?
We are, Cleo.
No, we're not. We're getting ready to end, brother. We're getting ready to end, and you're bringing in your bias and your perspective, and it's not. We cannot get into it in a way that's helpful in this little bit of time. Because when you tell me I'm gay, and you telling me who I am using that white frame of reference, which is what gay is, to tell me who I am and who I'm not, I'm coming from in terms of who I know I am.
Being gay, because homosexuality.
Look, brother, my question. See, you're saying stuff that there's no time to address, dude. Talking about African this and African that. There's no time to have that conversation. Do you want to have it?
To continue this conversation.
When do you want to do it?
At another time.
How about tomorrow?
Whenever you let me know the day and time.
Tomorrow.
Sure, I'm available.
Okay, cool. I'll let you know how much time we'll be able to give to this topic tomorrow, so we can do part 2. Because I want you to talk about the gay identity thing. What you just got finished saying is how you going to do this and how you going to do that. I want you to ask me those same questions so we can actually hear each other, because we can't do it right now, unfortunately, in that amount of time. And there's still people trying to call.
Can I drop my contact information for the listeners real quick?
You got to wait, because there's a sister from Washington who wants to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, sister from Washington.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. You know, I am totally disjointed by this whole dialogue. And the point being, brothers, and where I am a sister, unless you have been raped, then you don't understand the process of grooming. Unless you have been, understand what I'm saying, we've wished him because you didn't allow him at the top of the 2 hours to say what he was saying. So I know that you're and if you call tomorrow, I hope that everybody that's listening takes the time to just think about what you just said and how this conversation has gone. This is chaotic. And I'm just so sorry to have heard it, all of it. I would not have even listened to any of it because we did not disseminate the message that we needed to do for our people. Now, what you are.
Sister, hold that comment until tomorrow if you like, because we're going into the ending of the show. Thank you for that comment, sister from Washington. Thank you, Brother Umar, for calling and us having our dialogue. We will talk some more tomorrow at some point, and I think we're going to get something out of this conversation. This is the Cleo Monago person that's on the Roland Martin Show as a special guest, and we will be back with you tomorrow. Thank you.